I knew it. I knew he had a big hand. Woo! Oh, the ace came there for you, buddy.
Yo, look, I ain't saying that I'm rich, cause if I'm honest, I've never been. But when I look at all these other kids, I feel just a little bit ahead of them. You should know the business is competitive. There's a lot of people that I'm better than. Even veterans ain't got the knowledge I do. I've been reinvesting all I ever spent.
Hey, welcome back to this week's episode 2, The Rise of Vader. So last episode, after a very long introduction as to who I am, we had a decent session. If you want to check that out, I'll definitely put a video link at the end screen. So at the end of this episode, you can check that out if you want to go back and, see my story and what I'm all about. So I promise not every intro will be as long as that one, including this one. We're going to shorten this up a little bit for you, okay? So last week, we turned a very small profit of $400. Hey, it's a little over a buy-in, so I'll take it. It's actually really like a buy-in and a half, so not a bad session at all, and a good start to our bankroll challenge. Our bankroll is rising. Speaking of my goals, I think it's really important to talk about the path to how we're going to get there. Now, I know we talked about money, right? The 10K bankroll, the 10K challenge for the World Series of Poker bankroll, but we didn't really talk about the path to get there. Goals are good to have, but if you don't have a plan on how to get there, then they're just a dream. First, we have a volume goal of 70 hours for this month in April. For the month of May, we have a volume goal of 80 hours. And in June, we don't really have a specific goal. It's going to be a little bit more difficult because I will be, getting ready for the World Series. I'll also have my son. I'm hoping for a good amount of the time in June. It does depend on whether or not I can get his mom to swap weekends with me so that I can have him during the week. So that way the weekends where I'm at the World Series, I'm not missing time with him. So fingers crossed that we get that through. So in this episode, we're going to go back to TCH Social in Las Colinas, and we're going to continue to grow our bankroll. We make some big laydowns. We cooler someone for a near $700 pot, and we play queens in a really, really weird, bad way. Yeah. So we're starting with a $4,200 bankroll. Let's see if we can grow that today to $5K. You know what that means? It's time to grind. Hand of this session, we pick up pocket jacks under the gun, so we make our standard open to $10. Folds all the way around to the small blind who makes the call and the big blind who makes the call. So we're going three-handed to this flop and we're in position, so can't really ask for anything better. Flop comes King 10-8 Rainbow. Really good flop for our range. Small blind sometimes has some kings in his range, some queen jacks, things of that nature, although we do block queen jack pretty heavily. We check back thinking we're only going to get about 2 streets of value for this hand anyways. And the turn's the 4 of spades. They both check once again. We bet $15. Only the big blind calls. The river brings a jack, so we smash that board with the set. Big blind checks again. We decide to just min bet here. Don't see really what we're getting called by other than, maybe a king or something of that nature. So we bet, and he calls, and our villain, sure enough, has jack 10 offsuit. So he rivered 2 pair. That definitely would have called a much larger bet. Unfortunately, can't really put him on that when we have 2 jacks ourselves. We move tables, and in our first hand, we pick up king deuce suited on the button. Under the gun raises to 10. Only the cutoff calls, so we decide to go ahead and make the call. We're on the button, suited king. Maybe we can overflush one of these people. Small blind folds and big blind folds, which was a little unexpected. That's kind of why I decided to call, but that's okay. Flop comes ace of clubs, 9 of hearts, 3 of clubs. Under the gun bets 25. Cutoff calls. I don't really see a need to raise here when under the gun is the one that's leading into 2 different opponents with the ace-high board, so we decide to make the call with the absolute nut draw. The turn brings the absolute gin with the 10 of clubs, and ooh baby, what a great spot for us. The under the gun player checks, and the cutoff decides to go all in for about $110, $109, something like that. And so we think about it for, a few seconds. There's just no need to raise here. Even if under the gun has a set, as long as the board doesn't pair, we just have the absolute nuts. So I want the villain under the gun to call, with ace queen, with the queen of clubs, something like that. So, we decide to make the call, and under the gun thinks about it for a little while. I'd say about 20 seconds or so. And under the gun decides to make the call. And the river brings a great card, the queen of spades. And best news to our ears, our opponent says those magic words, all in. So what do? Snap call. We turn over our king deuce of clubs. The villain to our right, who initially went all in, he had the ace 10. And then under the gun shows queen jack of clubs. Wow, what a crazy cooler.
Cooler.
Okay, in this next one, there's not a ton of analysis as everything happens pre-flop, but I just want to highlight the importance of live reads. An early position player limps, a guy who never raises to 25 in the low jack, and someone who never three bets to $100. And we look down at ace king offsuit. Like, what do we do here, right? The standard GTO play would certainly 4-bet jam, as most of these stacks are around 300 to 400 range, right? But we tank, we think. We're fast forwarding this a little bit for you so you don't see how long we tank here. And we decide to make the fold. It gets all the way back to the low jack. He makes the fold, and they show their hands. The low jack has pocket tens, and the hijack? Pocket aces.
I knew it. I knew he had a big hand. Woo! Thought ace came there for you, buddy.
You don't know the power of the dark side.
And now we get involved in the very next hand. And of course, we're all in again because, hey, why not? We're pretty aggressive, so that's the way it's going to go down. It folds to the low jack, who decides to limp in for $2. Hijack, right behind him, limps in for 2. We look at the jack 9 of diamonds, and of course, we're going to make a raise, right? We're just not going to over limp with this type of weak type hand, but it does have, some floppability, so we decide to make it $20. Small blind calls, big blind calls. The low jack limper decides to call, and somehow getting the right price, the hijack decides to lay it down. So we're going to this flop, Texas heads up, 4-handed. And the flop comes king of diamonds, jack of spades, 3 of diamonds. It checks all the way around to us, and of course this is a great flop for us, so we're going to bet about our standard third pot. It folds to the low jack, he jams for right around $51. And of course we're not going to lay down a pair and a flush draw, so we make the call. Our opponent shows us king queen offsuit, so we're in really, really good shape here. We've got a ton of outs, and we just absolute brick everything. Brick, nice hand, low jack. Okay, y'all, I'm going to be honest. We really, really, really misplay this hand. I think it's important to show you not only the positive things I do, but also the negative things, so hopefully you can learn from me. Under the gun raises to $10. Now remember that guy who never 3-bets? He 3-bets to 45. That's a massive 3-bet. And of course, we look down at pocket queens in the small blind. Trust me, we have pocket queens. I'll show you here in a minute. So now we're going into the tank. Like, what do we do, right? I don't want to raise and have this guy 5-bet rip on me and then I have to fold. So I decided to make the call. Very unorthodox, I admit, and honestly, we probably should just be 4-betting here. But I expected this to go 3-handed, but something really weird happens. Not only does the under the gun initial raiser call, but the big blind calls as well. So now we're headed to the flop 4-handed and we're out of position. Great. The flop comes jack of diamonds, 10 of spades, 8 of hearts. So it's a rainbow board. It's actually a pretty good board for us. I don't really know what we need to be doing here, so I decide to check. I'm not sure this is a lead range board, but it checks around. The turn brings another jack. So I thought, okay, well, if the first 2 players don't have a jack, 3-better's definitely capped and feels like now he has ace king. So I decided to lead out here for $80. So about half pot bet, which I guess looking back, maybe a third pot's probably the best play here. The big blind calls, the under the gun initial raiser calls, and the guy who I thought had ace king folds. The river brings the one-liner to the straight. It brings the 7 of spades, so now any 9 makes a straight, and of course any jack has trips and beats our queen. So we decide to check. The big blind bets 125, and the initial raiser calls. So how could our queens be any good? We fold, and they both have a straight for a chop pot. Jack 9 and 8-9 offsuit. In for 2, in for 40. All right, in this next one, middle position limps, and it folds to us, and we look down at pocket 8s, and we decide to raise to 15 in the cutoff. Small blind calls, big blind calls, and the initial limper decides to fold. Okay, we're going to the flop three-handed, and we're in position on everybody. Love it. And that flop, 10 of spades, 8 of diamonds, 5 of diamonds. And even better news, big blind leads into us for 60. He doesn't have much behind. He has like maybe another 100 and 120 behind. So we think about it for a little while. Normally I would just call here, but the flop is very, very draw heavy, and this guy could be leading with the flush draw and might just call it off. So we decide to raise it up. We basically click it back to 135, folds back to the big blind, who snap folds. You're betting 60, bro. You're not gonna just get it in there? What are you folding? Anyway, on to the next one. Okay, we're at the same table, but we did move seats to give you a better view, and we look down at ace-7 suited in a straddled pot. There's a couple limpers behind us, so we decide to go ahead and overlimp, trying again to overflush somebody. Everybody else limps. We go to this pot six-handed. We actually have decent position on everybody. Only the button's left behind us, so pretty good spot in my opinion. The flop comes real good for our hand. It comes ace of spades, queen of hearts, 7 of diamonds, and it checks to us, so we decide to go ahead and make a bet to $15. The button flat calls, and everybody else decides they like money, so they're gonna fold. Now the turn brings an 8. So now there's flush draws, straight draws out there, so we decide we're gonna bet a little bit on the big side. We bet 60, our opponent jams, we snap call, and he turns over queen 8. And it's a good run out for us. No queen, no 8. We win, and we take down actually a pretty healthy pot of almost $400. So full buy-in at this 1-2 game. Okay, we have yet another crazy hand. So it's funny how I keep getting involved in these situations, right? So hijack limps. The button decides to raise to $15, and we're in the big blind. So the small blind folds, and we look down at 8-6 of diamonds in the big blind. And I think it's a good enough hand to make a call here. Planning on really the hijack making the call as well, which is exactly what happens. So we go to this flop three-handed, but we are out of position, so we're definitely going to be checking a lot of boards in this position. And the flop comes 8 of hearts, 5 of hearts, 3 of spades. So we decide to check, but the hijack limper does something weird and donk leads. So usually this is not a strong hand. Most people donk lead, they just are trying to do it with some small pair, something like that. They don't know where they're at. A lot of times with flush draws, things of that nature. Button folds, so this is a great opportunity for us to check raise. So we do just that, we check raise to $100. It gets back to our opponent, who kind of goes into the tank for a minute. He's thinking, and then he does something really unexpected and jams for another $300. So we're actually getting a pretty good price. We're getting right about 3-1 on our money. And if he's got a flush draw, it's kind of an automatic call. But if he has overcards, which he likely does with the flush draw, he actually has more equity in this hand than we do. So with 11 outs, it's actually really about a coin flip. Unless, of course, he has something like ace-3 of hearts. We think forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And then we decide to make the fold. Okay, in these next few hands, I just want to, show you how many times we have pocket jacks in this session. So we have pocket jacks here. We raise. We get one caller. He has a baby ace. And the very next hand, I pick up jacks again. I raise. Big blind calls. Ace flops again. Check call, and then check, turn, and river. Sure enough, she has a baby ace. So twice we lost to pocket jacks to really tiny aces post-flop. What are you going to do? Okay, in this next one of our good friends, Danny Force, is in the game. He's our realtor. I think we've bought and sold like 6 houses together, something like that. By the way, if you're in the Dallas area, highly recommend Danny Force. Great realtor. He does a fantastic job. But it limps around, and we look down at 7-6 offsuit in the big blind. So, of course, we're just going to check this one back. And the flop actually not too bad for our hand. We're definitely not going to lead out to everybody in this board. It's king of diamonds, 9 of clubs, 8 of clubs, so it checks around. The turn is the 3 of spades. And once again, I think now the pot's small. We can go ahead and check this one around, maybe even bluff river. So we checks to Danny, who decides to make a bet of $12. Now, Danny typically likes to bet when everyone checks to him twice, which is a good strategy. He should be doing that. But I know he does that. So I decide with the open-ended, I'm just going to go ahead and make the call. I probably actually should have check raised here, but I just don't know. He's a decent player. I don't know if he would buy that I'm check raising with a big hand here, and maybe he might even push on me. So I decide to just call. The river brings us a pair of 7s. So now we have some showdown value. So we check, and I decide that if he fires, I'm going to go ahead and make the call. So he decided to fire for $21, and we think about it for a second, make the call, and we hear those magic words. And we turn over our winning hand, and he's none too thrilled. Hey, kudos to you, Danny, for taking a shot at it. That's exactly what you should do. You just happen to be against someone who kind of knows how you play a little bit. Okay, let's end this session off with a nice little bluff ski. It's a straddled pot, folds to us on the cutoff. We look at queen jack offsuit, fine hand to raise in the cutoff. So we go ahead and do that. We raise to 15, folds to the small blind who calls, the big blind calls, and of course, you know the straddler's coming along for $10 more. So we go to the flop four-handed. But once again, in position. And that flop is ace 8, 6 rainbow. So pretty good flop for our range. I don't like that we're so multi-way, but everybody checks to us. We only have queen high. So if somebody check raises or calls, I don't mind wasting this hand. So we're going to go ahead and take a stab, and we fire for $15. And again, multi-way, I'm usually taking these like 20 to 30%, bet ranges. And the small blind's the only one who calls us. Now, if you remember him from a few hands ago, he had that queen 8 where he turned 2 pair, but he had middle pair when he called. So I decide I'm going to fire again at this if it's a turn safe card, which is what we get with the 2 of diamonds. He checks, I'm going to fire big. I want an 8 to fold. So I fire a bet of $60. That gets the job done. Our opponent folds, and we ship the last pot of the night. Let's go.
Whew. Another crazy session. It's kind of what happens when you're aggressive, though. Like, you're going to get into a lot of spots. I 3-bet a lot, mixing it up, defending. My brain feels a little fried. We got here late, right? As I mentioned earlier, 7 o'clock or so. My phone's up here. I don't know what time it is. I think it's midnight. So not bad. We ended up with 5 hours today, roughly. And it's more than I thought we were going to get. I thought maybe I'd get 3.5 hours. So 5's cool. Especially it helps with this hours thing that they have going on here at TCH this month. So all in all, pretty good session. If we didn't play those queens like a little bitch.
Your power is a weak old man.
Maybe I would have a little bit more money today. Still had a $108 hourly. That's pretty damn good. I'll take it. For a 1-2 game, that's pretty fucking solid. So not bad, but it would have been more had I played those queens. The thing is ace king suited's like the bottom of his range, or ace king's the bottom of his range. It's like, so I don't need to take a flip there at that table where I have a huge edge. Like, there's just no need to take a flip. I don't need to do it. So I felt like calling was the right play there, considering he doesn't 3-bet. On the board, I still think betting, leading there half pot. Talked to a couple friends of mine at 100K poker. Shout out to Jay, VA Venom, Rob Gardner, Poker Pasture, and Craig Savage. So, all in all, pretty good. And then, the set of 6s, I value on myself. And that was kind of unfortunate. And then the 6-8 that I check raise, I was very surprised that he led with Jack 8 of hearts. I think that's a weird lead to do when you just have a hammer lock on the hand. He's kind of lucky I had what I had. I mean, otherwise I don't check raise, if I don't have some kind of top pair. So, it was weird, but whatever. I would have gotten lucky and sucked out. He told me later he had Jack 8 of hearts. All right, but we are now from 4,300. We did a $530 profit. So we are now up to 4,800. We've got 2 more hundred to go, and we are halfway to our goal. So not bad, considering, it's only 2 sessions into our 15-session month this month. We still have got most of May. I don't actually have my son that much in May. And then I only have him 2 weekends in June. So I'm going to have about half of June before I go to the World Series of Poker. So still plenty to go. Obviously, anything can happen. So it is what it is. For now, just going to keep grinding, keep trying to get that stack higher and higher, get to that 10K, work on that WSOP bankroll. And then from there, it's just gravy, baby. All right. It's been a real one. It's been good. I got my son this weekend. See you guys in a few days. Till then, peace.
They hate when you elevate. They stacking up losses, I'm handing them out, yeah, I had to go delegate. It feel like I'm floating, I'm lost in the moment, I swear I could levitate. They never believed that I would really fly.